Hey, welcome back YouTube. Thanks for checking out another video. I've got a pair of these Soundstage speakers to review for you guys today, especially for my Canadian viewers out there. I'm sure a lot of you have questions about these speakers, so I plan on getting really deep and intimate with these speakers for y'all today. So hopefully you enjoy the ride. Hopefully you enjoy the journey. We are also going to be comparing them to the definitive BP10Bs and the B&W DM601. So stick around, enjoy the ride, and let's see if these speakers can make nice sounds. All right, let's dive right into it, shall we, and talk about the Soundstage speakers, who they are, and what type of person might purchase these speakers. Now, leave in the comment section below your experience with Soundstage, your overall impressions with the speakers, the brand. What do you think? I'm curious to know what my fellow Canadians are feeling on this subject. So, if you pop in Soundstage speakers into your Googler or YouTube search function, there's not a lot of good information that comes up. So that actually prompted me to do this video, go on this journey, and share my information or my findings with you guys. So I didn't know much about Soundstage, as a lot of people. There's not a lot of good information out there. So, you know, the only video I found on YouTube, the top comment on that video pretty well said, Soundstage is simply a rebranded precision acoustic product. And so I looked into it a little bit and pretty much came to the conclusion that yes, it is in fact a rebranded precision acoustic product. They are extremely similar in their overall dimensions, overall design of the drivers, the waveguides, everything is really similar with the precision acoustics. So yeah, the Soundstage speakers are pretty well a rebranded precision acoustic product. So who is Precision Acoustics? Well, pretty well they are a Canadian audio distributor, gone speaker manufacturer. I'm sure they saw a hole in the market for somewhat higher performance speakers at a more cost-effective, more attractive price, and so they decided to try to fill that hole. And pretty well, you know, they saw the kids having fun on spring break, so they decided, let's have some fun too. So Precision Acoustics, Canadian audio distributor, gone speaker manufacturer. I'm pretty sure their speakers are manufactured in Canada. I'm not too sure about their drive units themselves. I'm not too sure if those are manufactured in Canada or overseas. You can visit their website and see some of their company history if you like, but Soundstage speakers are pretty much a rebranded house brand speaker for Visions Electronics. That's all they are. They are exclusive to Visions Electronics. They most likely have the highest markup in terms of speakers. So the salesperson has quite a bit of flexibility when it comes to these speakers. As you can see, they are heavily discounted as of right now. And I don't think this is a one-time only kind of deal. I'm sure you can go in there any day of the week and get these speakers at a fairly competitive, really cost-effective kind of price. Now, should you do that? That's the question. Soundstage speakers, should you buy them? In my opinion, no. Stay far away from these speakers. I've had these tower speakers in my house for about 4 days, and I've done extensive listening of music and movies, and although they have some fairly decent attributes, the disadvantages highly outweigh the advantages of these speakers, especially the value proposition. And I'll get into what I think about what type of value these things have in the review portion of the video. But I'll tell you straight up, I don't think they have good value, and I'll go more in depth into that in a little bit here. So Soundstage speakers, I don't think you should buy them. They are a brand from Visions Electronics. Visions, I do believe, owns the brand itself. They get Precision Acoustics to build the products. There are some models, I'm sure, that are exclusive to Soundstage, like these ones designed by this Ian Pawsley. Who is Ian Pawsley? Apparently he is the dude that started, he started Mirage loudspeakers. He's part of the Audio Research Council in Canada. So those dudes are pretty intense. They're all about psychoacoustics and audio and acoustics, and just they do a lot of research and development, and they have a lot of tools and facilities to perform those tasks as well. So that's who Ian Pawsley is. He's the dude behind Mirage loudspeakers. And if you know anything about Mirage loudspeakers, they're big into omnidirectional and kind of bipolar designs, dipole designs. So as you can see, this is quote unquote some kind of omnidirectional speaker, which probably doesn't sound that great in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe it sounds fantastic. Some people really like those Mirage loudspeakers, so I'd be interested to see what these Ian Pawsley designed speakers actually sound like. I don't think they would be that great overall, and I don't think they would have a lot of value at that type of money. So without further ado, let's get into the review portion of this video. Let's have a look at the Soundstage Stage 4.0 speakers, tell you what I think about them. Let's get them naked and compare them to some other speakers. Let's go ahead and review this Soundstage Stage 4.0 loudspeaker combination. So I've had this pair of speakers for about 4 days now, and I'm thoroughly disappointed with these speakers. Granted, I only paid $40 for them. If you're considering paying full retail or a fair value, I would look at purchasing another brand such as KEF, Bowers & Wilkins, JM Labs, even Definitive Technology, Paradigm, something of the liking, even Energy. I would stay far away from Soundstage speakers from what I know about them and from my experience with them. So pretty well, had these for about 4 or 5 days now, and here's my overall pros and cons and things like that. So these speakers are fairly lightweight. They're only about 30 pounds, a little over 30 pounds, and so they're not overly heavy. They have a small footprint, so they're not extremely wide or really big like some loudspeakers can be. They are bi-ampable, and I'll show you the back of the speaker in a few moments here. So they're bi-ampable. They play loud enough, so they play fairly loud. They are kind of hungry for power. I'll grab the multimeter as well, and we'll see what kind of impedance they have. I really haven't checked Sorry, I couldn't find any information on the tech spec, so I don't know how sensitive these speakers are, nor is it rated on the back. They are rated for 200 watts, and they're fairly power hungry. They will take some power, so if you could feed these things 200 to 300 watts, I'm sure they would be somewhat happy, but I don't think you should buy them. I don't think you should invest the time and money into these speakers, to be honest with you. You know what? They have a good rubber surround on the drivers, so I really like that about the drivers. They have some fairly okay excursion. So I think they would rate these drivers at 6.5 inches. However, I'm more into thinking that they are closer to a 6-inch driver. Overall, from the outside of the basket to the outside of the basket, it's 6.5 inches, but the actual cone surface area is only 4 inches, whereas the Definitive Technology right beside it, and even my B&W DM601, have 4.5 inches of cone surface area. So I think these speakers lack in that sense, where they lack in the cone surface area. There's a lot of cons about these speakers, and pretty much let's get into that right now. So for music, these are not very good at all. When I get a pair of speakers, I subject them to my music testing. So I don't listen to a lot of traditional music you guys might be listening to. I listen to a lot of rap, gangster rap, EDM. I like Bjork. I like Morchiba. I like Portishead. I like electronic music. And luckily for me, I have a few pairs of loudspeakers I can easily compare them to and do A/B tests. And for music, for a couple days, I simply played these two speakers. And I only listened to music because I wanted to hear how things sounded on them. I was never really engaged with the music. I was never like looking for something new or trying to experience a piece of music that I've known really well, because all the sounds that I got out of these speakers, they were meh. So for music, in terms of performance, I would give them a 4 out of 10. These speakers, here's where I think the cons are, or their downsides are. The driver material is not a very good material. The material seems to lack a lot in how it projects sound and how sound rolls off and how sound decays from the driver material itself. They will, the 6-inch drivers there, they'll play fairly loud. They'll perform fairly well. They're somewhat dynamic, but a lot of the mid-band frequencies are kind of a little bit muffled, a little bit muddy, not really natural. I wouldn't even call them flat. I wouldn't call them bright. They're just kind of shit in the mid-band frequencies. So the drivers are really, the 6-inch drivers are poorly designed. The tweeter doesn't sound too bad overall, the soft dome tweeter, but the gel of the drivers with the crossover, in my opinion, is really, really crap as well. Pretty much, I don't like how these speakers sound. I don't like the way they're crossed over. I don't like the driver design. I don't think they sound very well. When I was doing A/B tests between these and the B&W DM601s, the B&Ws just captivated voices and sounds like nobody's business. They are probably the most musical speaker I have in my setup, so I defaulted to them as my reference. And they engaged me with the music. They conveyed emotion. After 2 days of listening to these speakers, I unplugged them, put on the B&Ws, and I literally cried listening to a music track. I was so engaged with the music or whatever, but it was an emotional, visceral experience. And not once did I have that type of engagement with these speakers on a couple days of listening with a lot of tracks that I've listened to in the past, and I can use as reference. I like to use Bjork as a reference. She has some crazy, crazy material. I love her voice. I love her use of instruments and electronic sounds and that type of thing. Large frequency scale in her music as well. So, but these speakers, in terms of music, really, really poor. 4 out of 10. That's what I would give them. The only reason they get points is because they can kind of play loud. They can take some power. They kind of fill the room with sound. Now, the cabinet design as well. Let's talk about the cabinet design and my overall impressions. So, I can't find any specs on these, but the somewhat similar cabinet from Precision Acoustics is rated down to 45 Hertz. And I actually guessed that. I knew that in the back of my head, that these speakers were putting out about 45 Hertz, pretty clean. And I would vouch for them. I would say they are putting out about 45 Hertz. And I think it's largely to do with the cabinet design and somewhat the quality of the drivers and how the drivers have some excursion. So overall, the cabinet design I think is pretty good. Now it's a light speaker. I think I measured, I did a quick measurement in the back, and I measured about 1/2 an inch. Considering the veneer, I would say that these cabinets are only 3/8 of an inch. Now I'm curious to know if they have a separate enclosure in there. I've got these screws pretty well out of the top driver and the tweeter, so we're going to have a look at that in a second and see what this cabinet design is all about. And we're going to look at the crossover as well and see what that's all about as well. We can also compare these drivers to a couple drivers I've got set aside on the Definitive Technology speaker there. So for music, 4 out of 10. For movies, I was going to give them a 6, but I actually decided to give them so for movies, 5 out of 10. Now, I was originally going to give these guys a 6 out of 10 for movies, but they totally lost a point after listening to a couple movie audio scores, and I was just, everything I heard was disappointing. So first I had to think, what makes the audio score in a movie? And I pretty well, thought, well, there's the natural sounds that we hear, whether it's a human voice, the sound of water or wind. So sounds that we can, pretty well any terrestrial sound that we can imagine, right? So to me, that's a natural sound, or a terrestrial sound rather. And then there's the audio or the music score. And the music score is, comprised of orchestras, and there's lots of instruments, and there's a few instruments that really captivate you in movies, violins, trumpets, lots of drums, and there's a lot of great instruments that'll captivate you in a movie. And then the other thing is the special effects. So the special effects sounds that an audio engineer might put into the movie track to make it more lifelike or more engaging, or add that sense of effect, right? So anyways, that's how I feel about the audio score in a movie. And with these speakers, for example, I put on the Hobbit, and in my opinion, the Lord of the Rings kind of series has some of the most cinematic experience that you can have in your home and experience, really, in terms of audio and video quality. So I put on the Hobbit, and I went through a lot of the tracks, a lot of the scenes in that movie, and just skipped through it. And I found that, what really made that audio track involving in a lot of aspects was the orchestra and the singing and the music score in that movie is just amazing. And when you can't capture voices and project them well in music, that's going to translate to movies as well. And that's what I found with these speakers. They did a poor job at reproducing that part of the music score in the movie for me. And I thought, for sound effects, they did okay. For natural sounds, they were all right in that movie. But what really turned me off in that particular movie was the audio score was just, or the music score rather, was just completely trashed. And then I put on another film, IMAX Tahiti. And that one just has a lot of terrestrial sounds in there. A lot of waves crashing and water sounds. And, it's been proven that humans are very, very sensitive to the mid and high frequencies, right? A lot of the things we hear, especially in the mid band, are human voices and just things of that nature. Even just the sound of water, which we wouldn't think about, but a lot of things like that, the psychoacoustics come into play, and when that's off a little bit, we pick up on that. on that stuff. We're really sensitive. And I really picked up on that with these speakers. I really picked up on that with these speakers. So, you know, I originally gave them 6 out of 10 for movies, and then they dropped a point. They're fairly dynamic overall. They can reproduce a lot of the sounds, you know, that the engineer intended for you to hear, but they won't reproduce that in a very good manner. And some of the stuff, in my opinion, just sounds like shit. It sounds horrible, some of the sounds that come out of these speakers. So, sorry guys, I don't really think they make good sounds for music or movies. I don't think they're a good value. When you buy a loudspeaker for $800, hopefully you might be able to sell that speaker for $200 or $300 when you're ready to part with it. This loudspeaker, I mean, I paid $40 for the pair, and I even found another pair for $80. So, you know, somebody probably paid $400 to $600 for these speakers. I'm probably guessing right around the $500 mark, and you know, they're conceivably losing all value. So I don't think there's a lot of value with these speakers. Buy yourself a good brand like Definitive or B&W, something with some engineering. So let's have a look at these guys. Let's get into the dirty parts. So that's the back of the speaker there. What drew me to these speakers was the overall depth of the cabinet. They're like 14 inches. So I was like, oh, that's a pretty deep cabinet. So I've got all the screws pulled out. This is going to be a first for you and a first for me. Let's have a look at this crossover and see what this is about. Before we do that, Soundstage, Stage 4.0, rated at 200 watts and a bullshit serial number. So let's pull this out. Let's have a look at this crossover here. Well, I don't know much about crossovers, to be honest. What I know is the more simpler a crossover is, the better off you are. It's not going to rob your original signal, and pretty much that means that the drivers are very well designed for their intended application. So that's the crossover in your Soundstage speaker here. It doesn't look anything crazy. It doesn't look too cheap. It doesn't look too high end. It looks meh. Yeah, that's it. So now normally I don't like pulling apart speakers because all these little foam gaskets and stuff, I don't like messing with this shit. But as you can see, we've got some insulating material in there. That's good as well. And there's your cabinet there. It's got our tape measure handy, so I can't really see very good here, so yeah, really poor image. But I'm gonna say I'm gonna go with these cabinets are, oh fuck, I'm gonna say 3/8 on the cabinet. I don't even think they're 1/2 inch on the cabinet. I could be wrong, but I'm gonna say 3/8 with that because I'm 1/2 inch with the laminate there. So that's the bullshit crossover design. You can see we have a flared port, which is pretty decent actually. So, and we've got some insulation material. So let's get into the best part here. Let's see what these guys are really about. Let's start with the tweeter. So I'm gonna actually just set the camera up here. Let's look at these drivers here. It's pretty disappointing. So this tweeter doesn't feel too bad. It's got a little bit of mass to it, and it seems okay in terms of overall dimensions. But look at that, it's only rated at 10 watts. So I don't know how significant that is, what kind of impact that's going to have on our experience. But what I can tell you is this fucking driver here. Look at this shit. Plastic I don't know if you can tell, but that is a plastic fucking fake cast basket. Really? Did you guys really do that? Plastic basket? So 12 ohms, 15 watts. This kind of reeks of Chinesium, unfortunately. Not that there's anything wrong with Chinese-made products, but this kind of looks really, really bad, guys. Really bad. This is not good. Don't buy these speakers. Not when they're giving you something like this. Let's put a couple speakers. Let's put these side by side with a couple other drivers here. So just move this guy, and we'll grab a driver. This is a Paradigm driver. Now both of these have the magnetic shield on there. Oh, we got some screws falling out, but it's the way she goes. So that's a 6.5 inch from a reputable company versus a 6.5 inch from a fucking garbage company. So the Paradigm, look what they're giving you. They're giving you a real metal cast basket. This driver is an old driver too. This is out of a CC350 center speaker, which is very similar to the center speaker I have, the CC370. Yeah, so Paradigm's giving you a real basket. They're giving you a real driver with a real voice coil. Unfortunately, Paradigm doesn't really have the ratings on the driver itself. So just some kind of model information. Oh my goodness, let's look at these. These leads just look absolutely horrible as well. Plastic basket. You know, the magnet doesn't seem too terribly bad, but I will be honest, the Paradigm driver is a lot heavier than this thing, this piece of garbage. So I was hoping to see a separate enclosure here because this cabinet actually sounds okay, but you see that they have, you know, some bracing. There's actually some bracing going on in this cabinet. So the cabinet's not too bad overall. I think if you heard the cabinet, you would be impressed with the cabinet. So that's going to conclude my review here of the Soundstage speakers, the Stage 4.0s. They're really garbage speakers, really garbage. Yeah, so let's see if this is gonna. So we've got, yeah, these are the two drivers, and I'm fairly certain, yeah, the other driver's identical for the lower driver there. So I'm not going to pull that guy out for you. So really garbage, really poor. Soundstage 4.0. Don't buy these things. They're just garbage. Who gives you a plastic basket and just these Chinesium drivers? Overall, this speaker is rated for 6 ohms. I measured it, so that's that. Hope you guys enjoyed this this ramble and this weird review. Look forward to doing more of these on these cheap entry-level products that may or may not fascinate you at all. And no foam surround, no gasket on the drivers. So that's really garbage. On the Soundstage speakers, honestly, stay away from these speakers. Do not buy. Buyer beware. They're not white van speakers, but they are very entry level, and I don't think you're going to have a really good experience. And you're pretty well 80% of your way to a really good product, so why stop at 80%? Save for another month, eat some Ichiban noodles, and get yourself some good speakers, okay? Stay away from the Soundstage product. If you're okay with them, and you know, more importantly, you want to support your salesperson, if you believe in your salesperson, if you've had a good sales experience with that person, then I would buy the speakers. Maybe you need the in-house financing. That might be a thing. It might be the cost, but don't spend $500, $600, $700, $800 on these speakers, please. Look at used options. Look at some of the KEF models that are sold by Visions. Stay far away from the Soundstage speakers. These speakers perform very poorly for music. They perform very poorly for movies. And when I say poorly, I mean that they're not very convincing. When you hear the sound of her voice, it doesn't sound like Nate Dogg. Nate Dogg should sound like Nate Dogg. These speakers, they don't work like that. Water should sound like water. These speakers cannot represent the way water sounds very accurately. So yeah, just stay far away from these Soundstage speakers. Luckily, I only paid 40 bucks for them. Maybe I can flip them, make 20 bucks. Hopefully I'll, do all right. I might just give them to my neighbor. He's into ultra low end budget stuff. So I might give them to him and see what he thinks about these speakers. So thanks for checking out this somewhat ramble of a video, this obnoxious review, and stay tuned. Hopefully I can get some more crappy products to bring to your attention in the future. Have a good day and peace!